The licensee shall notify the division of any change in the licensee's mailing address within 30 days after the change. 8.4.1 Shallow water well constructor licenses shall expire and be renewed according to the following provisions. A. The licenses whose last name begins with A through L shall expire at 12 midnight on June 30 of odd-numbered years. B. The licenses whose last name begins with M through Z shall expire at 12 midnight on June 30 of even-numbered years. C. Licensees who meet the renewal requirements set forth in subsection R 655-4-8 on or before the expiration deadline set forth in subsection R 6554-8 shall be authorized to operate as a licensed shallow well constructor until the new license is issued. If a licensee does not complete the renewal requirements by the license expiration date, the license will become inactive, and the licensee must cease and desist all regulated work until the license has been renewed. D. Licensees must renew their licenses within 24 months of the license expiration date. Licensees failing to renew within 24 months of the license expiration date must reapply for a license, meet all the application requirements of subsection R 655-4-3. 8.4.2 Applications to renew a license must include the following items. A. Payment of the license renewal fee determined and approved by the legislature. B. Written application to the state engineer. C. As applicable to the type of license, proper submission of all start cards, official well driller reports, also known as well logs, pump installer reports, also known as pump logs, and well abandonment reports for the current licensing period. 8.4.3 License renewal applications that do not meet the requirements of subsection R 655-4-8 by June 30 of the expiration year or which are received after June 30 of the expiration year will be assessed an additional administrative late fee determined and approved by the legislature. 655-4-8 or 655-4-9. The approval process for non-production wells. 9.1 General. Regulated non-production wells such as cathodic protection wells, closed-loop heating cooling exchange wells, monitor wells, piezometers, test wells, and other wells meeting the criteria in subsection R 655-4-1 drilled and constructed to a depth greater than 30 feet below natural ground surface require approval from the state engineer. The approval and permitting of regulated water production wells as outlined in subsection R 655-4-1 is accomplished through the water right processes in accordance with Title 73, Water and Irrigation. 9.2 Approval to drill, construct, renovate or replace. Approval to drill, construct, renovate, or replace non-production wells is issued by the state engineer's main office and regional offices following review of written requests from the owner applicant or their appointed representative. The appointed representative shall not include the licensed driller designated on the application. The requests for approval shall be made on forms provided by the state engineer entitled Request for Non-Production Well Construction. The following information must be included on the form. A. General location or common description of the project. B. Specific course and distance locations from established government surveyed outside section corners or quarter corners. C. Total anticipated number of wells to be installed. D. Diameters, approximate depths and materials used in the wells. E. Projected start and completion dates. F. Name and license number of the driller contracted to install the wells. G. A detailed explanation of the purpose and technical aspects of the drilling project. This can also include reviews and approvals such as building permits, done by local jurisdictions of the project. This additional documentation may expedite the division's processing of the non-production well application. H. Signature of the well owner or authorized representative attesting to the accuracy and truthfulness of the information on the application. The licensed driller cannot be the signatory on the non-production well application. 9.2.1. There is no fee required to request approval to drill, construct, renovate, or replace a non-production well. Using available information and sources, the division will evaluate the potential for the non-production well to become a contamination source or otherwise negatively impact the groundwater resource before approval. This evaluation can take up to 14 days to conduct. The division shall list application information on its website to allow the public and local jurisdictions to review the project before approval. The well permit application shall be returned without review to the applicant if the division determines that the application is incomplete, contains inaccurate information. The approval process for non-production wells lacks sufficient information or is illegible. The division shall deny the issuance of a well permit if the site where the well is to be drilled is designated by the division as an area where wells may not be constructed, including contaminated or protected aquifers, areas where drilling and construction of wells can impact other water rights, and other areas where environmental remediation may be adversely affected by the construction or operation of wells. Upon written approval by the state engineer, the project will be assigned an approved non-production well number, which will be referenced on all start cards and official well drillers' reports. R 655-4-9. General requirements. 10.1 Standards 10.1.1. In some locations, the compliance with the following minimum standards will not result in a well being free from pollution, or from being a source of subsurface leakage, waste, or contamination of the groundwater resource. Since it is impractical to try to prepare standards for every conceivable situation, the well driller or pump installer shall judge when to construct or otherwise perform work on wells under more stringent standards when such precautions are necessary to protect the groundwater supply and those using the well in question. Other state and local regulations pertaining to well drilling and construction, groundwater protection, isolation distances, also known as setbacks, from potential contamination sources or other structures or boundaries, and water quality and testing regulations may exist that are either more stringent than this rule or that specifically apply to a given situation or area. It is the licensee's responsibility to understand and apply other federal, state, and local regulations as applicable. 10.2 Well site locations. 10.2.1 Well site locations are described by course and distance from outside section corners or quarter corners, based on a section, township, and range cadastral system, and by the Universal Transverse Mercator Coordinate System on all state engineer authorizations to drill, also known as start cards. However, The licensee should also be familiar with local zoning ordinances, or county boards of health requirements which may limit or restrict the actual well location and construction in relationship to property or structure boundaries, and existing or proposed concentrated sources of pollution or contamination such as septic tanks, drain fields, sewer lines, stock corrals, or feedlots. The licensee should also be familiar with Title 54, Chapter 8A, Utah Underground Facilities Act, which requires subsurface excavators including well drilling to notify operators of underground utilities before to any subsurface excavation. Information on this requirement can be found by calling Blue Stakes Utility Notification Center at 662-4111. 10.2.2 Regulated wells shall be drilled at the approved location, as defined on the valid start card. The driller shall check the drilling location against the authorized location on the start card before the start of drilling to see if it matches the state-approved location listed on the driller's start card. If the proposed well location does not match the state-approved well location, the driller shall notify the applicant and the state engineer's office. Drilling a well at an unapproved location is a violation. 655-410. General requirements. 10.3 Unusual conditions. 10.3.1. If unusual conditions occur at a well site and compliance with this rule will not result in a satisfactory well or protection to the groundwater supply, a licensee shall request that special standards be prescribed for a particular well, also known as a variance request. The request for special standards shall be in writing and shall set forth the location of the well, the name of the owner, the unusual conditions existing at the well site, the reasons and justification that compliance with this rule and minimum standards will not result in a satisfactory well, and the proposed standards that the licensee believes will be more adequate for this particular well. If the state engineer finds that the proposed changes are in the best interest of the public, the state engineer will approve the proposed changes by assigning special standards for the particular well under consideration. At the division's discretion, the licensee applying for the variance may be required to provide additional technical information justifying the variance. The variance request will be evaluated, and a response will be given within 14 days. In a public health emergency or other exceptional circumstance, verbal notification for a variance may be given. An emergency usually consists of a well failure, resulting in a dry well or an unusable well. Driller convenience does not constitute an emergency. R 655-4-10. Well drilling and construction requirements. 11 General standards in this section apply to wells greater than 30 feet. For shallow water well requirements, see section R 655-417. 11.1 Approved products, materials, and procedures. 11.1.1 Any product, material or procedure designed for use in the drilling, construction, cleaning, renovation, development, pump installation or repair, or abandonment of water production or non-production wells, which has received certification and approval for its intended use by the National Sanitation Foundation under ANSI NSF Standard 60 or 61, the American Society for Testing Materials, the American Water Works Association, or the American National Standards Institute, may be utilized. Other products, materials, or procedures may also be utilized for their intended purpose upon manufacturer certification that they meet or exceed the standards or certifications referred to in this section and upon state engineer approval. 11.1.2 Public supply wells are also regulated by the Division of Drinking Water, and there are additional construction requirements in Rule R 309-515. 11.2 Well casing, general. 11.2.1 Driller's responsibility. It shall be the sole responsibility of the well driller to determine the suitability of any type of well casing for the particular well being constructed, in accordance with these minimum requirements. 11.2.2 Casing stick-up. The well casing shall extend a minimum of 18 inches above finished ground level, and the natural ground surface should slope away from the casing. A secure sanitary, weatherproof mechanically secured cap, seal, or a completely welded cap shall be placed on the top of the well casing to prevent contamination of the well. If a vent is placed in the cap, it shall be properly screened to prevent access to the well by debris, insects, or other animals. 11.2.3 Steel casing. All steel casing installed in Utah shall be in new or like new condition, being free from pits or breaks, clean with all potentially dangerous chemicals or coatings removed, and shall meet the minimum specifications listed in Table 6 of this rule. To utilize steel well casing, or steel blank casing and screen combinations that does not fall within the category specified in Table 6, the driller shall receive written approval from the state engineer. All steel casing installed in Utah shall meet or exceed the minimum ASTM, ANSI, or OBLUA standards for steel pipe, as described in subsection R 655-411, unless otherwise approved by the state engineer. Applicable standards may include and are incorporated by reference into this rule. OBLUA 100 AWUA standard for water wells, 2020 edition. ASTM 53 A53M to 20 standard specifications for pipe steel, black and hot dipped, zinc coated, welded and seamless, 2020 edition. R 655-411. ASTM 139 A139M to 16 standard specification for electric fusion welded steel pipe, 2016 edition. Audiobook C 200 2017 standard for steel water pipe, 6 inches and larger, 2017 edition. ASTM a 589 A589M 206 standard specification for seamless and welded carbon steel water well pipe, 2018 edition. ASTM a 106 A106M to 19 a standard specification for seamless carbon steel pipe for high temperature service, 2019 edition. ASTM a 778 A778M to 16 standard specifications for welded, unannealed austenitic stainless steel tubular products, 2021 editions. ASTM a 252 A252M to 19 standard specification for welded and seamless steel pipe piles, 2019 edition. Specification for seamless, welded, and ASTM a 312 A312M to 21 standard heavily cold-worked austenitic stainless steel pipes, 2021 edition. ASTM a 409 A409M to 19 standard specification for welded large diameter austenitic steel pipe for corrosive or high temperature service, 2019 edition. ASTM a 606 A606M to 18 standard specification for steel, sheet and strip, high Strength, low alloy, hot rolled and cold rolled, with improved atmospheric corrosion resistance, 2018 edition. R 655-411. R 655-411. Well drilling and construction requirements. Table 6 minimum wall thickness for steel well casing depth range nominal 02030406 008001000 1500 casing to 2222 diameter 200 300 406 008001000 1500 2000 feet 5 6 series check 10 12 shet 14 optit 16 2 24 30. Note, minimum wall thickness is in inches. For nominal casing diameters less than 5 inches, the minimum wall thickness must be equivalent to ASTM Schedule 40. For any other casing diameter not addressed in subsection R 655-411, approval by the state engineer is required. Conversions: 0.250 equal to 1/4, 0.312 equal to 5/16, 0.375 equal to 3/8, 0.312 equal to 7/16. 11.2.4.1 Materials. PVC well casing and screen may be installed in Utah upon obtaining permission of the well owner. Other types of non-metallic casing or screen must be approved by the state engineer before installation. Plastic well casing and screen shall be manufactured and installed to conform with the American National Standards Institute or the American Society for Testing and Materials Standard F480-14 2022 edition, which is incorporated by reference to this rule. Casing and screen meeting this standard is normally marked well casing and with the ANSI STM designation F480 SDR17 or similar standard dimension ratio. All plastic casing and screen for use in potable water supplies shall be manufactured to be acceptable to the American National Standards Institute's National Sanitation Foundation Standard 61. Other types of plastic casings and screens may be installed upon manufacturer certification that such casing meets or exceeds the STM SDR specification or ANSI SF approval, and upon state engineer approval. 11.2.4.2 Minimum wall thickness and depth requirements. PVC well casing and well drilling and construction requirements. Screen for non-production wells with a nominal diameter equal to or less than 4 inches shall meet the minimum wall thickness required under ASTM standard F480-95 SDR21 or a Schedule 40 designation. Or a Schedule 4 non-production well purposes with a nominal diameter greater than 4 inches shall meet the minimum wall thickness required under ASTM standard F480-95 SDR17 or a Schedule 80-95 SDR17. Shall meet the minimum wall thickness required under ASTM standard F480-95 SDR17 or a Schedule 80-95. Additionally, caution should be used when other than factory slots or perforations are added to PVC well casing. The installation of hand-cut slots or perforations significantly reduces the collapse strength tolerances of unaltered casings. The depth at which plastic casing and screen is placed in a well shall conform to the minimum requirements and restrictions as outlined in ASTM standard F480-14 2022 edition and to PVC casing manufacturer recommendations. Liner pipe does not need to meet these wall thickness requirements if it is placed inside of a casing that does meet these wall thickness requirements. 1102.4.3 Fiberglass casing. Fiberglass reinforced plastic well casings and screens may be installed in wells upon obtaining permission of the well owner. All fiberglass casing or screens installed in wells for use in potable water supplies shall be manufactured to be acceptable by ANSI NSF Standard 61 and upon state engineer approval. 11.2.4.4 Driving non-metallic casing. Non-metallic casing shall not be driven, jacked, or dropped, and may only be installed in an oversized borehole. 11.2.4.5 Protective casing. If plastic or other non-metallic casing is utilized, the driller shall install a protective steel casing which complies with subsection R 655-411, or an equivalent protective covering approved by the state engineer over and around the well casing at ground surface to a depth of at least 2:1/2 feet. If a pitless adapter is installed on the well, the bottom of the protective cover shall be placed above the pitless adapter or well connection. If the pitless adapter is placed in the protective casing shall extend below the pitless entrance in the well casing, and be sealed both on the outside of the protective casing and between the protective casing and well casing. The protective cover shall be sealed in the borehole in accordance with the requirements of subsection R 655-411. The annular space between the protective cover and non-metallic casing shall also be sealed with acceptable materials in accordance with subsection R 655-411. A sanitary, weather-tight seal or a completely welded cap shall be placed on top of the protective cover, thus enclosing the well itself. If the sanitary seal is vented, screens shall be placed in the vent to prevent debris, insects, and other animals from entering the well. This protective casing requirement does not apply to monitor wells. R 655-411. R 655-411. Well drilling and construction requirements. 1155-411. FAR 11. Wall well casing joints shall be made watertight. In instances in which a reduction in casing diameter is made, there shall be enough overlap of the casings to prevent misalignment and to ensure the making of an adequate seal in the annular space between casings to prevent the movement of unstable sediment or formation material into the well, in addition to preventing the degradation of the water supply by the migration of inferior quality water through the annular space between the two casings. 11.3.2 Steel casing. All steel casing shall be screw coupled or welded. If the joints are welded, the weld shall meet American Welding Society standards and be at least as thick as the wall thickness of the casing, and shall consist of at least 2 beads for the full circumference of the joint and be fully penetrating. Spot welding of joints is prohibited. State engineer approval must be obtained for other steel casing joint types such as spline joints or dielectric couplings. 11.3.3 Plastic casing. All plastic well casing shall be mechanically screw coupled, chemically welded, cam locked or lug coupled to provide watertight joints as per ANSI ASTM F480-95. Metal screws driven into casing joints shall not be long enough to penetrate the inside surface of the casing. Metal screws should be used only when surrounding air temperatures are below 50 degrees Fahrenheit, which retards the normal setting of the cement. Solvent welded joints shall not impart taste, odors, toxic substances, or bacterial contamination to the water in the well. 11.4 Surface seals and interval seals. 11.4.1 General. Before the drill rig is removed from the drill site of a well, a surface seal shall be installed. Well casings shall be sealed, to prevent the possible downward movement of contaminated surface waters in the annular space around the well casing. The seal shall also prevent the upward movement of artesian waters within the annular space around the well casing. Depending upon hydrogeologic conditions around the well, interval seals may need to be installed to prevent the movement of groundwater either upward or downward around the well from zones that have been cased out of the well due to poor water quality or other reasons. The following surface and interval seal requirements apply equally to rotary drilled, cable tool drilled, bored, jetted, augered, and driven wells unless otherwise specified. 11.4.2 Seal material. 11.4.2.1 General. The seal material shall consist of neat cement grout, sand cement grout, unhydrated bentonite, or bentonite grout as defined in Section R 655.4.2. Use of sealing materials other than those listed in Section R 655.4.11 must be approved by the state engineer. Bentonite drilling fluid, also known as drilling mud, dry drilling bentonite, or drill cuttings, are not an acceptable sealing material. In no case shall drilling mud, drill cuttings, drill chips, or puddling clay be used or allowed to fill, partially fill, or fall into the required sealing interval of a well during construction of the well. The annular space. R 655.4.11 Well drilling and construction requirements. To be grouted must be protected from collapse and the introduction of materials other than grout. All hydrated sealing materials, such as neat cement grout, sand cement grout, and bentonite grout, shall be placed by tremie pipe, pumping, or pressure from the bottom of the seal interval upwards in one continuous operation when placed below a depth of 30 feet or when placed below static groundwater level. Neat cement and sand cement grouts must be allowed to cure a minimum of 24 hours before well drilling, construction, or testing may be resumed. Allowable setting times may be reduced or lengthened by use of accelerators or retardants specifically designed to change setting time, at the approval of the state engineer. The volume of annular space in the seal interval shall be calculated by the driller to determine the estimated volume of seal material required to seal the annular space. The driller shall place at least the volume of material equal to the volume of annular space, thus ensuring that a continuous seal is placed. The driller shall maintain the well casing centered in the borehole during seal placement, using centralizers or other means to ensure that the seal is placed radially and vertically continuous. Neat cement and sand cement grout shall not be used for surface or interval seals, with PVC and other approved non-metallic casing, unless specific state engineer approval is obtained. 11.4.2.2 Bentonite grout. Bentonite used to prepare grout for sealing shall have the ability to gel, not separate into water and solid materials after it gels, have a hydraulic conductivity or permeability value of 10 e to 7 centimeters per second or less, contain at least 20% solids by weight of bentonite, and have a fluid weight of 9.5 pounds per gallon or greater, and be specifically designed for sealing. In addition, if a bentonite grout is to be placed in the vado zone, also known as the unsaturated interval, then clean rounded fine sand shall be added to the bentonite grout to increase the overall solids content and stabilize the grout from dehydrating and cracking in that interval. For 20% solids bentonite grout, at least 100 pounds of clean rounded fine sand shall be added per 50 pounds of bentonite. For 30% solids bentonite grout, at least 50 pounds of clean fine sand shall be added per 50 pounds of bentonite. Bentonite grout shall not be used for sealing intervals of fractured rock or sealing intervals of highly unstable material that could collapse or displace the sealing material, unless otherwise approved by the state engineer. Bentonite grout shall not be used as a sealing material where rapidly flowing groundwater might erode it. Bentonite or polymer drilling fluid, also known as drilling mud, does not meet the definition of a grout with respect to density, gel strength, and solids content, and shall not be used for sealing purposes. Bentonite grout contain materials that are toxic, polluting, develop odor or color changes, or serve as a microbacterial nutrient. All bentonite grout shall be prepared and installed according to the manufacturer's instructions and this rule. All additives must be certified by a recognized certification authority such as NSF and approved by the state engineer. All bentonite used in any well shall be certified by NSF ANSI approved standards for use in potable water supply wells, or equivalent standards as approved by the state engineer. 11.4.2.3 Unhydrated bentonite. Unhydrated bentonite, such as granular, tabular, R 655.4.11, well drilling and construction requirements, pelletized or chip bentonite, may be used in the construction of well seals above a depth of 50 feet. Unhydrated bentonite can be placed below a depth of 50 feet when placed inside the annulus of two casings, when placed using a tremie pipe, or by using a placement method approved by the state engineer. The bentonite material shall be specifically designed for well sealing and be within industry tolerances. All unhydrated bentonite used for sealing must be free of organic polymers and other contamination. Placement of bentonite shall conform to the manufacturer's specifications and instructions, and result in a seal free of voids or bridges. Granular or powdered bentonite shall not be placed under water by gravity feeding from the surface. When placing unhydrated bentonite, a sounding or tamping tool shall be run in the sealing interval during pouring, to measure fill-up rate, verify a continuous seal placement, and to break up possible bridges or cake formation. 11.04.3 Seal and unperforated casing placement. 11.4.3.1 General seal requirements. The surface seal must be placed in an annular space that has a minimum diameter of 4 inches larger than the nominal size of the permanent well casing. This amounts to a 2-inch annulus. The surface seal must extend from land surface to a minimum depth of 30 feet. The completed surface seal must fully surround the permanent well casing, must be evenly distributed, free of voids, and extend to undisturbed or recompacted soil. In unconsolidated formations such as gravels, sands, or other unstable conditions, when the use of drilling fluid or other means of keeping the borehole open are not employed, either a temporary surface casing with a minimum depth of 30 feet and a minimum nominal diameter of 4 inches greater than the outermost permanent casing shall be utilized to ensure proper seal placement, or the well driller shall notify the state engineer's office that the seal will be placed in a potentially unstable open borehole without a temporary surface casing by telephone or fax in conjunction with the start card submittal, to provide an opportunity for the state engineer's office to inspect the placement of the seal. If a temporary surface casing is utilized, the surface casing shall be removed in conjunction with the placement of the seal. Alternatively, conductor casing may be sealed permanently in place to a depth of 30 feet, with a minimum 2-inch annular seal between the surface casing and borehole wall. If the temporary surface casing is to be removed, the surface casing shall be withdrawn as sealing material is placed between the outermost permanent well casing and borehole wall. The sealing material shall be kept at a sufficient height above the bottom of the temporary surface casing as it is withdrawn to prevent caving of the borehole wall. If the temporary conductor casing is driven in place without a 2-inch annular seal between the surface casing and borehole wall, the surface casing shall be removed. Specific state engineer approval must be obtained on a case-by-case basis for any variation of these requirements. Surface seals and unperforated casing shall be installed in wells located in unconsolidated formation such as sand and gravel with minor clay or confining units, unconsolidated formation consisting of stratified layers of materials such as sand, gravel, and clay or other confining units, and R 655-411, well drilling and construction requirements. Consolidated formations according to the following procedures. 11.4.3.2, unconsolidated formation without significant confining units. This includes wells that penetrate an aquifer overlain by unconsolidated formations such as sand and gravel, without significant clay beds of at least 6 feet in thickness or other confining formations. The surface seal must be placed in a 2-inch annular space to a minimum depth of 30 feet. Permanent unperforated casing shall extend at least to a depth of 30 feet and also extend below the lowest anticipated pumping level. Additional casing placed in the open borehole below the required depths noted in section R 655-411 shall meet the casing requirements of subsection R 655-49 unless the casing is installed as a liner inside a larger diameter approved casing. 1104.3.3, unconsolidated formation with significant confining units. This includes wells that penetrate an aquifer overlain by clay or other confining formations that are at least 6 feet thick. The surface seal must be placed in a 2-inch annular space to a minimum depth of 30 feet and at least 5 feet into the confining unit above the water-bearing formation. Unperforated casing shall extend from ground surface to at least 30 feet and to the bottom of the confining unit overlying the water-bearing formation. If necessary to complete the well, a smaller diameter casing, liner, or well screen may be installed below the unperforated casing. The annular space between the two casings shall be sealed with grout, bentonite, or mechanical packer. Additional casing placed in the open borehole below the required depths, noted in section R 655-411, shall meet the casing requirements of subsection R 655-411, unless the casing is installed as a liner inside a larger diameter approved casing. 11.4.3.4 Consolidated formation. This includes drilled wells that penetrate an aquifer, either within or overlain by a consolidated formation. The surface seal must be placed in a 2-inch annular space, to a minimum depth of 30 feet and at least 5 feet, into competent consolidated formation. Unperforated permanent casing shall be installed to extend to a depth of at least 30 feet, and the lower part of the casing shall be driven and sealed at least 5 feet into the consolidated formation. If necessary to complete the well, a smaller diameter casing, liner, or well screen may be installed below the unperforated casing. The annular space between the two casings shall be sealed with grout, bentonite, or mechanical packer. Additional casing placed in the open borehole below the required depths, noted in section R 655-411, shall meet the casing requirements of subsection R 655-411, unless the casing is installed as a liner inside a larger diameter approved casing. 11.4.3.5 Sealing artesian wells. Unperforated well casing shall extend into the confining stratum overlying the artesian zone, and shall be adequately sealed into the confining stratum to prevent both surface and subsurface leakage from the artesian zone. If leaks occur around the well casing or adjacent to the well shall be completed with the seals, packers, or casing necessary to eliminate the leakage. The driller shall not move the drilling rig from the well site until leakage is completely stopped, unless R 655-4-11, well drilling and construction requirements. Authority for temporary removal of the drilling rig is granted by the state engineer, or when loss of life or property is imminent. If the well flows naturally at land surface due to artesian pressure, the well shall be equipped with a control valve so that the flow can be completely stopped. The control valve must be available for inspection by the state engineer at all times. All flowing artesian water supply wells shall be tested for artesian shut-in pressure in pounds per square inch and rate of flow in cubic feet per second, or gallons per minute, under free discharge conditions. This data shall be reported on the well log. 11.4.3.6 Exceptions. With state engineer approval, exceptions to minimum seal depths can be made for shallow wells where the water to be produced is at a depth less than 30 feet. In no case shall a surface seal extend to a total depth less than 10 feet below land surface. 11.4.4 Interval seals. Formations containing undesirable materials such as fine sand and silt that can damage pumping equipment and result in turbid water, contaminated groundwater, or poor quality groundwater must be sealed off so that the unfavorable formation cannot contribute to the performance and quality of the well. These zones, as well as zones with significantly differing pressures, must also be sealed to eliminate the potential of cross-contamination or commingling between two aquifers of differing quality and pressure. Unless approved by the state engineer, construction of wells that cause the commingling or cross-connection of otherwise separate aquifers is not allowed. 11.4.5 Other sealing methods. In wells where the methods of well sealing described in section R 655-411 do not apply, special sealing procedures can be approved by the state engineer upon written request by the licensed well driller. 11.5 Special requirements for oversized and gravel-packed wells. This section applies to wells, in which casing is installed in an open borehole without driving or drilling in the casing, and an annular space is left between the borehole wall and well casing. For example, mud rotary wells, flooded reverse circulation wells, and air rotary wells in open bedrock. 1105.1 Oversized borehole. The diameter of the borehole shall be at least 4 inches larger than the outside diameter of the well casing to be installed, to allow for proper placement of the gravel pack or formation stabilizer, and adequate clearance for grouting and surface seal installations. To accept a smaller diameter casing in any oversized borehole penetrating unconsolidated or stratified formations, the annular space must be sealed in accordance with subsection R 655-411. To minimize the risk of 1. Borehole caving or collapse, 2. Casing failure or collapse, or 3. Axial distortion of the casing, it is required that the entire annular space in an oversized borehole between the casing and borehole wall be filled with formation stabilizer such as approved seal material, gravel pack, filter material, or other state engineer approved materials. Well casing placed in an oversized borehole should be suspended at the ground surface until all formation. R 655-4-11, well drilling and construction requirements. Stabilizer material is placed to reduce axial distortion of the casing if it is allowed to rest on the bottom of an open oversized borehole. To accept a smaller diameter casing, the annular space in an oversized borehole penetrating unconsolidated formations with no confining layer must be sealed in accordance with subsection R 655-411 to a depth of at least 30 feet or from static water level to ground surface, whichever is deeper. The annular space in an oversized borehole penetrating stratified or consolidated formations must be sealed in accordance with subsection R 655-411 to a depth of at least 30 feet or impervious strata such as clay or competent consolidated formation overlying the water producing zones back to ground surface, whichever is deeper. Especially in the case of an oversized borehole, the requirements of subsection R 655-411 regarding interval sealing must be followed. 1105.2 Gravel pack or filter material. The gravel pack or filter material shall consist of clean, well-rounded, chemically stable grains that are smooth and uniform. The filter material should not contain more than 2% by weight of thin, flat, or elongated pieces, and should not contain organic impurities or contaminants of any kind. To assure that no contamination is introduced into the well via the gravel pack must be washed with a minimum 100 ppm solution of chlorinated water or dry hypochlorite, mixed with the gravel pack at the surface, before it is introduced into the well. See Table 7 of this rule for required amount of chlorine material. 11.5.3 Placement of filter material. All filter material shall be placed using a method that through common usage has been shown to minimize a. Bridging of the material between the borehole and the casing, and b. Excessive segregation of the material after it has been introduced into the annulus and before it settles into place. It is not acceptable to place filter material by pouring from the ground surface unless proper sounding devices are utilized to measure dynamic filter depth, evaluate pour rate, and minimize bridging and formation of voids. 1105.4 No surface casing used. If no permanent conductor casing is installed, neat cement grout, sand cement grout, bentonite grout, or unhydrated bentonite seal shall be installed in accordance with subsection R 655-411. 11.5.5 Permanent conductor casing used. If permanent conductor casing is installed, it shall be unperforated and installed and sealed in accordance with subsection R 655-411. After the gravel pack has been installed between the conductor casing and the well casing, the annular space between the two casings shall be sealed by either welding a watertight steel cap between the two casings at land surface, or filling the annular space between the two casings with neat cement grout, sand cement grout, bentonite grout, or unhydrated bentonite from at least 50 feet to the surface, and in accordance with subsection R 655-411. If a hole will be created in the permanent conductor casing to install a pitless adapter into the well casing, the annual space between the conductor casing and well casing shall be sealed to at least a depth of 30 feet with neat cement grout, sand cement grout, bentonite grout, or unhydrated bentonite. A waterproof cap or weld. Ring sealing the two casings at the surface by itself without the annular seal between the two casings is unacceptable when a pitless adapter is installed in this fashion. Moreover, in this case, the annular space between the surface casing and well casing must be at least 2 inches to facilitate seal placement. 11.5.6 Gravel feed pipe. If a gravel feed pipe, used to add gravel to the gravel pack after well completion, is installed, the diameter of the borehole in the sealing interval must be at least 4 inches in diameter greater than the permanent casing, plus the diameter of the gravel feed pipe. The gravel feed pipe must have at least 2 inches of seal between it and the borehole wall. The gravel feed pipe must extend at least 18 inches above ground, and must be sealed at the top with a watertight cap or plug. 1105.7 Other gravel feed options. If a permanent surface casing or conductor casing is installed in the construction of a filter pack well, a watertight, completely welded, steel plate, also known as a weld ring, at least 3/16 of an inch in thickness shall be installed between the inner production casing and the outer surface or conductor casing at the wellhead. A watertight fill port with threaded cap may be installed for placing additional filter pack material in the well. 11.6 Protection of the